Chapter 2. Stag. Her ship was losing chunks of metal as she fell below him. He was less than 2 miles off, getting pelted with her debris. Then her Raptor's emergency atmospheric engines roared to life. He was already working on his, but he wasn't prepared for the dying craft below, barreling down and spinning around and around to start shooting at him from that position. "Fucking bitch!" Stag swore under his breath as the Raptor's laser cannons aligned with his ship mid-roll, and she fucking shot him. The attack pelleted his hull and he returned fire. Neither of them could really control anything well enough to aim, but he felt a pang of satisfaction when he burned through her landing gear. Stag had no idea what had come over him back there. But when Keaton popped in, a capability they were definitely not supposed to be revealing to the fucking company, and shot at her like a goddamn coward stabbing a knife through an opponent's back, Stag felt an immediate pang of rage mixed with something even more fucked up, like possessiveness. He was meant to destroy her. No one else. They'd been at it for months. The others had started accusing him of losing sight of what was important for not letting them go in there and stage an ambush. They hounded him for going out there at all, considering if he died they'd all be fucked, sitting ducks on a ship they couldn't control. But Stag refused to let the others go out there all alone. They'd just lost 4 pilots. Was he meant to just sit on his ass and do nothing? Fuck no. They needed revenge, and to get their last scan so they could finish the job and forget this goddamn station. Reacting how he did to his opponent finally getting shot wasn't part of the plan, though. Well, at least now he did destroy her. Fuck, he probably destroyed both of them. He shouldn't have shot down Keaton's missile, but Keaton shouldn't have shot him. They were both such idiots. Keaton had reacted instinctively, just like Stag had. He probably thought he was defending himself. Fuck. Stag watched her go down in a cloud of smoke, something twisting in his gut. He had no time to dwell on it, fighting for what little control the blaring and bleeding ship would give him. As he was trying to find a flat spot to guide the ship to crash on, because he already knew it would not be anything close to what could be called a landing, he glimpsed a chute in the corner of his eye. Damn, she was still alive. He was certainly disappointed, but also maybe just a little proud. This whole mission was fucking with his head. His landing gear wouldn't eject, but that was no surprise, so he hit the ground like a boulder, crashing and rolling along the chasm in which he landed. When the abused ship finally slid to a halt, Stag wasted no time. The first thing he checked was life support, and by some miracle it wasn't damaged. 5.2 days of oxygen remaining. That should be enough time for the others to pick him up, except for the fact that comms were non-operational when he tried to open a link. Fuck. Stag sat there for a few moments, strapped in and catching his breath, taking stock. No way would he get himself off the ground. Even if his ship were functional, it wasn't a planetary cruiser. A Raptor not weighed down by all the scanning gear he was packing could maybe manage it. His craft wouldn't be able to overpower the gravitational pull of the planet. Her Raptor could, though. But he saw that thing go down. It was useless. Which reminded him, the pilot had ejected. Did she make it? How long did she have? Arvex had no breathable atmosphere, but the other conditions on the planet were survivable. At some point she'd freeze to death, but that would be long after she'd run out of oxygen. Stag checked his own oxpack levels. It was already strapped to his back, ready to pipe through his helmet. Standard stuff. He was at 32%, giving him a bit under an hour. He didn't know why he was even thinking about going out to get her. She was probably going to try to kill him. Shit, if her people detected that she were alive, they'd be way more likely to come down looking for her from the station, possibly killing him in the process. And surely his crew would come get him. But what if they didn't? He had no way of contacting them. What if he needed another way to get off this fucking lifeless rock? Yes, he had to find her, use her as a potential way out of here. As he unclasped his harness and went through the airlock out onto the planet's surface, his curiosity mounted. After months of trying to destroy each other, Stag was going to see who exactly he was dealing with. That was good, because it would help dismantle this ridiculous image he'd built up of her in his head, based on nothing but her voice and her flying. In real life, she wouldn't be this mysterious, alluring badass hot on his heels. She'd be ugly, clumsy, and maybe dead. Good. She was pretty dead-looking when he found her sprawled on her stomach at the top of the crater. He was already out of breath, having had to climb the crater, but luckily once he was up there, he spotted her about a mile away, signaling with her high-vis orange flight suit. Stagg watched for signs of movement and saw none. Her oxpack might have gotten damaged, though they were pretty sturdy, being designed for situations just like this one. He picked up his pace, circling the edge of the crater to get to her position. He crouched on his heels a few steps away, grabbing the pistol from its holster and training it on the motionless body before him. She could be smart. Judging by her flying, she probably was. For all he knew, she was just waiting for him to get within striking distance. Shit, she could be hiding her own pistol under her stomach, with the way her hand was twisted up under her body like that. Stagg chanced stepping closer. Her back was moving with slow breaths, not dead. He nudged her side with his boot, gently at first, then with a nice little kick. If she was faking, she was damn good at it. "All right, let's go," he muttered, bending down to hoist the body over his shoulder. He glanced at the indicator on the oxpack as he did so. 10%. Shit, she must have no more than 10 minutes left in that thing. He was already exhausted from climbing the crater, and getting down did not seem any easier. At least she was a light load to carry. With all that flight gear, he was expecting for it to be a struggle, but the company must have engineered some more efficient shit since the last time he stole gear from them. By the time he clambered down the crater, she had started to stir, and when he was at the airlock, she was kicking, punching, and kneeing him in whatever soft spot she could find. She made no sound as she did so, preserving what was left of her oxygen, no doubt. Stagg threw her to the ground with a grunt as she yanked on the edge of his helmet, trying to rip off the clasp. Little fucker. He dragged her by one leg through the airlock, her back bouncing and scraping over the gray rocks and debris that lay scattered around the crash site. When they were finally in the internal compartment of his ship, Stagg released his hold on her ankle, dropping her writhing body to the floor. He retreated to the other side of the small space and reached back for his pistol. And shit, it was gone. Well, not gone. It was being pointed at his face by the crazy bitch in front of him. He stared at the scraped-up black surface of her helmet, which obscured her face. She was panting now, no doubt gasping for air, but there was no way she was taking her hands off that gun. Stagg cocked his head, shoulders relaxing. A moment later, he unclasped his helmet, dragging it off his head and letting it dangle in his hand. He enjoyed the way her crouched body went rigid as his relaxed. "Go on then," he said with a twinge of amusement. There was a click as she pulled the trigger, and he had to admit he was expecting her to at least hesitate a little.
Fuck!
She wheezed out a muffled growl from beneath her helmet as the butt of the pistol flashed red. It was grip-locked, of course, would only fire if the little gene sampler embedded in the grip recognized his blood. She shoved the gun into her belt. He'd have to get that later, and straightened, ripping her helmet off. This was nothing like what he was hoping for. He stood frozen in place as she tilted her head up and sucked for breath, hoarse, wheezing sounds matching the tempo of her chest rising and falling as she panted. Sweat-soaked blonde hair was stuck to her forehead and temples. Wild, red-rimmed eyes glared at him, pupils dilated, making her look like a black-eyed, possessed thing. Stagg had been counting on this moment to break this weird goddamn fantasy he'd developed about this pilot in their months of sparring. She was meant to be ugly, maybe bald, super dry-looking. He knew that one was a long shot. She was guarding a water station, for God's sake, but a man could dream. This revelation should have ensured that his judgment would never be compromised in her presence again. But fuck it, it just made it worse. He was gaping for too long because the next thing he knew, she was barreling straight at him, a flash of silver and black in her hand. She clearly had no idea how to fight, but she was damn well enthusiastic about it. He grunted as she slashed the knife in all directions and then did something completely preposterous. "Did you just fucking headbutt me?" he barked as her head rammed into his chest, hard, and her arm continued making stabbing motions. He grabbed her wrist easily, twisting until she had no choice but to let go of the knife. With a smooth motion, he confiscated it from her hand, dodging just before her knee was able to make contact with his groin. He snatched her other wrist with the same hand and forced them up over her head, then jutted his free palm into her chest to keep her from advancing with her kicks.
"Let go of my tit, you stupid gnat,"
she hissed, and that was when Stagg realized he was grabbing something a little too full and fleshy. Shit, He yanked his hand away. Wait, what did you just call me?
What?
She blinked up at him, trying fruitlessly to wrangle her wrists out of his grasp over her head. I said, Stagg growled, leaning in close with a cold glare. What did you call me?
You heard me, Nat. That's what we all call you. You're like what do they call them? Crap.
Crap? Who says crap? A fly, he finished for her, mouth twisting into a scowl.
Yeah, a fly buzzing around the station for who knows what reason.
She gave him another half-hearted kick, but there wasn't much left in her. Stagg stared at her for a few seconds, long enough to notice the apprehension escalate in her eyes as they pinged between his own. Was she wondering what he was going to do to her for insulting him like this? Calling him a gnat? The little bitch did deserve some sort of payback for putting him through this shit. There he was, saving her life twice, and she tried to fucking shoot him, and then she called him a fly. She really had some goddamn nerve. Well, let her pay for her behavior. Let him teach her a lesson. When Stagg reached for her with his free hand again and clamped it to her waist, the first thing on her face was confusion. There was something else, too, underneath that. Something he thought he recognized because he was pretty sure she was seeing the same thing in his eyes. But they were both professionals. They shut that part out real quick. He didn't want her, of course. It was just strategy, mastering the enemy. Stagg's hand was back at her tit, the same one he grabbed before, squeezing. She jerked her wrists over her head, but there was no fight in it. Nothing but a show.